this live stream back in New York, and I'm sitting there watching, and now today I can be here in the store. So hi to everybody watching at home. Anyway, very excited to welcome two fabulous women authors who will be joining us today. Kate Flannery, who wrote Striptease, a memoir of millennial Los Angeles. Very cool cover. I'm just going to read your bio in case people don't know about you. Sure. Kate Flannery was born and raised in northeastern Pennsylvania. She holds a BA in creative writing from Bryn Mawr College and currently works for the Emmy Award-winning RuPaul's Drag Race. She is the lead singer and frontwoman for LA's premier Little Richard tribute band, Big Dick.
Say it loud. Say it. It's called Big Dick, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks. You say it. You say it. Striptease is her first book, and I'm never reading a bio again. Okay, so back to finish now. Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. Montell?
I love Montell.
Montell is a writer and language scholar from Baltimore, Maryland. She is the author of the critically acclaimed Word Slut, a feminist guide to taking back the English language, which she is developing for television with FX. Her writing has appeared in Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan Glamour, The Rumpus, Nylon, Birdie, and Who, What, Where she formerly served as the features and beauty editor. Amanda holds a degree in linguistics from NYU and lives in Los Angeles' Silver Lake neighborhood. You came far.
We both did.
Wow.
Both did. I know, it's a carpool.
Yeah, that's a hike with her partner, Plants and Pets. So welcome to the two of you.
Thank you. I feel like I have to specify that my band is called Big Dick because we do Little Richard. I'm like a total deviant.
Yeah, Big Dick, Little Richard.
It's wordplay.
Yeah,
It's not vulgarity, it's wordplay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow, what a joy this is. We just met for the first time and had a hibiscus spritz. It was extremely enjoyable. And we discovered, well, I actually already knew this because I attended a book event of yours for Striptease the other week, but we shared a writing instructor a few years ago, many years ago for me, and I can't wait to talk about her. But first, just to start off, for those who have dared not to read the book yet, could you briefly summarize the story and what moved you to write it at the particular time that you did?
Sure. So my book is Striptease. It's about my time working for a very controversial and provocative fashion company called American Apparel, right around the turn of the new millennium in the first few years. And I was sort of, fresh off the turnip truck, just out of college, having a very idealized version of the woman that I wanted to be. And American Apparel just sort of sucked me in. And that's what the book's about. It's a coming of age story. It's also a juicy expose. Yeah, that's it.
So I am wearing my American Apparel jean shorts. Had to. They're my favorite jean shorts.
Yes.
Which I feel equal parts like ashamed and proud of. And I think that duality really says something about general cultural attitudes toward the brand. But with a few years of reflection, what really motivated you to write this story at the time that you did?
Yeah. Well, as the story was happening, I knew it was just too juicy. As a writer, I'm always searching for a story, and I didn't think I would find it, in a retail store. But as it was happening, I knew, this is something I'll reflect on later. So after my time in the company, I spent 3 years there. I started writing a fictionalized version. I was so close, American Apparel was still rare and to go, very big. I was so close to everything. I read about 75 pages, and then I kind of gave up. Really, I needed I needed 10 years to go by. I needed the Me Too movement to happen. And I'm so glad I did, because it really is a story, a true story that needs to be told. Because honestly, if I fictionalized it, people might not even believe some of the stuff that was happening in there. So yeah, I'm really glad I waited. But really the story sort of told itself. I just had to write it down.
It does, reading your writing, it does really feel very natural and fluid, like it's sort of poured out of you. It doesn't feel like heavy-handed or forced at all. Had you been journaling throughout your experience at American Apparel? How were your memories so lucid?
Sure. I've never been really a journaler, especially back then. I was so just like scrambling, trying to pay my bills, working long hours, that I never, I mean, man, the book would probably be so much better if I had really journaled. But I was a note taker. When I would have an insane conversation with Dove, because I knew this book was always living inside me. I even told them, I was like, I'm gonna write this book one day. They're like, yeah, right. Like no one took me seriously.
Wow.
So a lot of, when I had this one sort of really egregious conversation with Dove that is at the end of the book, I went right back into that store in Miami. I have a flyer that says, now hiring Miami. And I turned it over and I wrote down everything he said. And when it came time to write that conversation, 18 years later, I just took out that piece of paper and wrote exactly what he said. So a lot of the quotes many are direct quotes. Some of that stuff, all the little details that stick with you, that haunt you, like that's what you write when you write memoir, like just the little things that stick with you.
Yeah.
And I managed to get them all in there pretty much. Every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, when I met one of the first girls that I worked with, her name's Gia, I kind of wrote her off in the beginning as sort of like a beautiful blonde who was sort of aloof. I was like, she's a bimbo, which is just such a spotlight on my own, my own insecurities or my own ignorance. And then on my lunch break, I saw her reading Anna Karenina. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Every once in a while, I'll maybe think of a detail like that. I'm like, that should have been there.
That's so great. That's like in White Lotus season 1 when Sydney Sweeney's character is reading like Albert Camus, and it's like people are more complex than maybe memory serves or our own bias serves. But it's such a funny. It's such a funny facet of writing memoir that the act of documenting your memories forces you to face them, it forces you to confront them in a way that's not so simplistic.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so how many people here were like American Apparel wearers, shoppers back in the day? Okay, not everybody. I'm so curious to know, like, what are people's impressions of the American Apparel brand? Anyone? Yeah.
So I just did a complete overhaul of my apartment in New York City, and I have some closets that have clothes that I haven't worn in years. And I found all my American Apparel clothes, and I cannot get rid of them because that was such a fun time of my life.
Yes.
And those clothes were so iconic for that era, and so I still have them. And this book is really special because I could totally feel like I was there.
Yes, it's so
That's
genius.
so great to hear. There are certain brands that just sort of epitomize eras, like the 80s, like Ralph Lauren, the 90s, like Betsy Johnson or that whole thing. But really, when you think about the 2000s, like the only thing that comes to mind for me is American Apparel. Kind of like the last good fight in some ways before like Sheen comes in, Forever 21 taking over, kind of dirty business.
It's such a complex brand, and we're going to talk about that more. But first, I want to speak a little bit. I mentioned that we shared a writing instructor, and I want to hear, or I would love to hear again for you to share the story of how you came to actually writing this book, because I think it's so inspiring for an LA crowd. I don't know if there are any aspiring book writers here, but LA is not known for being as literary a town as New York. But the journey to your writing of this book and the book itself are both so distinctly LA. So please share with the class.
Sure. I work in reality television, also such a product of Los Angeles. And, I've got some good gigs. I work on Drag Race. It's a union gig. I have health insurance. It's wonderful. But I was sort of, I went to school for writing, and I'd always sort of thought I had this book in me. And, at some point I was just like, I have to get back to myself. So I started taking these community writing classes at this place called Writing Pad. And there I met this woman named Brett Hazel, who is also an actress, who is also a producer, who is also an author, and has also taught Amanda. She's just like
her classes are amazing. Give her a Google.
Writing Pad, Brett Hazel, So I was taking memoir classes from her, and I started writing about American Apparel, and everyone in the class was like responding to it. And it was when I had sort of ventured into writing memoir instead of writing fiction. And she said to me, and this is like something I just want to like shout from the rooftop so everyone knows, she was like, you know, you can sell a nonfiction book on a proposal. Like, you don't even have to write the book. I was like, oh my God, I'm a nerd. I can write a proposal, like bring it on. And that way I'll have at least some like legal action if I don't finish this book. Like it will force me to finish this book that I've always wanted to write. Because like, I don't know if you guys know this, but like writing is really hard. Really, really brutally, awfully hard. So I needed to like be contractually obligated to write a book. So yeah, if you want to write a coffee table book, a cookbook, anything that's nonfiction, a memoir, a biography, like you can sell it before it's actually written. And I took another class, how to write a book proposal. And I studied and wrote a book proposal and then went out for agents. And like, that's the LA way. I mean, maybe they have these classes in New York, but you know, I've never, in some ways, I learned so much more from these classes than I did in like my undergrad. Because I'm learning from like writers who are optioning their work, who are working in Hollywood, who are acting, who are producing. Like they're going to tell you how to get stuff done.
And they're not ashamed to talk about the business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
That's the world.
Yeah, there's often shame in sort of stuffy literary circles about marketing your work or selling your work.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think it's so inspiring to learn that like it's not like some muse struck you one day and was like, this is my memoir. It's like a teacher told you this could be a book, and you made it happen. Okay, so you open the book by framing American Apparel in the context of a cult. And I was wondering if you might grace us with reading a few pages from the very beginning of the book.
Yes, I would love to.
Because I would love to talk more about American Apparel as a pseudo-cult.
Yes, for sure. It's interesting because I had written like 5 chapters. You know, I moved from Philadelphia. I had started in Philly. I was working for this other fashion company. I was writing sort of the whole build up to why I ended up in California. And my editor was like, we're like 50 pages in and you're not in California. Like we're starting here when the first chapter when you're in California. And that's where I'm starting now, you know, and the first line is something, you know, I never intended it to be the first line, but when he said that, I was like, oh my God, no, that's the first sentence of this book. And it is, I was in Los Angeles for less than a month before I got scouted by a cult. It was autumn of 2004 and I was 23, prime cult age. It didn't happen the way I would have expected. It didn't involve a free-loving Manson type with a flower in his beard or a wild-eyed Marshall Applewhite pitching a UFO ride on a comet. Freak daddies like that were easy to spot. They'd never catch me. I was fresh out of Bryn Mawr, a women's college back east, well-trained in feminist ideology. I knew that I could spot a bad man a mile away. But it was just a girl who approached me, someone like me. I didn't suspect a thing. The Glendale Galleria was my kind of mall. Not the Beverly Center, not the Grove, not any mall where Cher Horowitz would have shopped. Those places were packed with the pricey Y2K styles of the day that made me cringe. Bedazzled Ed Hardy tees, distressed diesel jeans, Von Dutch trucker hats, expensive tattoo-themed clothing that I associated with dorky rocker dads or rich kids searching for personality. Flashy brands and logo worship only communicated how much money a person had. Paying to be an advertisement was for suckers. I had too much fashion ingenuity for that. But the Glendale Galleria was a mall for the proletariat. It didn't put on airs. It had a Payless, a Mervyn's. It was a fashion destination for people on a budget, my people. I rolled down the escalator into its sacred depths. Inside the Galleria, it was dark and dank with fountains and foliage unchanged from the 1980s. I instantly knew it, an old friend, despite having never stepped foot inside. And the loneliness that had been haunting me all day lifted in an instant. Even though I was 2,000 miles from it, I was home. I had just moved from Philly and I didn't know a soul. My new life was feeling so empty, I needed cheap stuff to fill it up. And there was something particularly alluring that drew me to the Galleria that day. A store I had heard about that was becoming ubiquitous in Los Angeles, popping up faster than a rash of Starbucks in the cityscape. It was a fast fashion empire to rule them all. Pitch perfect knockoffs of designer styles on an endlessly rotating trend carousel that changed out daily. If you couldn't afford a Murakami Louis Vuitton monogram bag or the Miu Miu pleated micro mini, you could pacify yourself with their bogus cousins for a fraction of the price, and you wouldn't feel bad tossing them when the trends shifted in a month or two. I spotted the store's golden logo ahead. Forever 21. The name alone was pure poetry written in the California sand. Forever 21, like the spirit of a rollerblading bikini girl riding into the Venice beach dust. Forever 21, like Madonna, like Angeline, faces and bodies sculpted into youthful approximations of their aging corporal forms. Forever 21, the true spirit of Los Angeles. I felt it enter me. I was possessed. I spotted it up ahead. I was close now. Only one barrier stood between us. A lady in a white smock stepped in my path and fired a stream of perfume from a glittery pink bottle. Britney Spears fantasy, dear lady? No, I cried. An aerosol mist smelling like cupcakes hazed down around me. Leave me alone, lady, forever awaits. I could see the glimmering storefront ahead. I was practically skipping now. I imagined all my new outfits waiting for me in there, future iterations of myself to try on for size. My eyes were so focused on the prize, I didn't see the girl up ahead. I nearly collided with her. Excuse me, she said, smiling a friendly smile, resting her hand lightly on my shoulder. I turned around to face her. She was wearing a college sweatshirt that said Northridge across the front. Her swishy blonde hair fell to her shoulders, and her pink face glowed in a freshly scrubbed way. She had on Levi's and pastel Sauconys, and her big smile instantly disarmed me. Hi, I said, returning her smile, waiting to hear what she needed. Directions, maybe? I stood up a little taller. Only 2 weeks in LA, and I was already getting mistaken for a local, one of those mythic California girls they write songs and movies about. This was going to be a real piece of... I had a prophecy for you, the girl said, interrupting my fantasy. A prophecy? Here by the Sunglass Hut? Was she joking? For a second, I was jolted back to middle school. Was this girl bullying me? Was she messing with me while her giggling friends watched from the shadows? But the girl wasn't laughing, just smiling that wide toothpaste grin at me. It's about the mother god, she said. I looked into her eyes then for the first time. She held my stare like it belonged to her. In that moment, everything about this normal girl melted away. Her eyes were completely empty and as deep and black as a vortex. I couldn't see a real girl in there. And her smile wasn't friendly as I had first thought. It was dreamy and unhinged. It disconnected itself from the hollowness of her stare. A slow tingle started at the tip of my ears and coursed down my body. I was frozen there, glued to the industrial grade linoleum. I opened my mouth to say something, but I couldn't find the words. She crept in closer. I realized my silence was encouraging her, making her think I was interested. Do you know the mother god? She said, I'll never forget, staring me down with those zombie eyes. My brain kicked into action then. It furiously computed the facts. The mother god, a prophecy, a cult. Reality blasted back into view. The tableau of normal mall life unchanged around me. An instrumental version of the Spice Girls' Say You Will Be There was pumping through the overhead speakers. A snatch of a conversation from two women wearing name tags floated by. The perfume lady was still there, squirting passersby. Everyone was going about their regular lives, unaware of the mother god and the cult girl and her hand on my shoulder. It felt like a 2-ton weight holding me there. Back at Bryn Mawr, I learned what to do if a pervert is following you. You make a lot of noise, you draw attention to yourself. The hall advisors handed out these silver whistles during freshman orientation with wholesome, out of touch instructions to fend off assault. If you're feeling threatened, blow your whistle. If you see someone being attacked, blow your whistle. if you hear someone blowing their whistle, blow your whistle. But I was not prepared for this. No one and no whistle was going to save me from this nice college girl. I had to figure this one out on my own. I pulled away from her grip and power walked to the parking garage, looking over my shoulder the whole way, a deflated version of the girl who had strolled in. I never even made it to Forever 21 that day. For all my swagger, all my liberated woman in a new city BS I had been pumping myself up with since I arrived, the experience rattled me. It was the first inkling of doubt I had that the world outside my feminist utopia of a Seventh Sister school might not be as textbook as they had made it out to be. As a woman, I'm always scanning my environment for predators, but running in fear of another girl, well, that was a new one. On the drive back home, I checked myself out in the rearview mirror. I looked the same as any other girl in the mall that day, a pedestrian ponytail, my eyeliner beginning to smudge with the afternoon. But the cult girl had sniffed out my loneliness like a dog on a fox. How had she been able to tell so easily? Was my new girl naivete that obvious? Perhaps. A vulnerability that shot from me like light off a mirror? I felt weak and exposed, like all my confidence had leaked out. I wasn't fooling anyone. I started second guessing all of my decisions about coming to Los Angeles without any real plans. Maybe I had made a terrible mistake. One thing was for sure. I was going to have to be careful on my own. I couldn't let something like this happen again. I was lonely, but not lonely enough for the Mother God. A few months later, I met Ivy. Instead of a prophecy, she held out a business card. Come join our team, the card read. American Apparel. I took it from her hand immediately. That's the very beginning. Spoilers.
Oh my God, I get chills when you read that last line. It's so
Thank
good.
you.
It's such a good way. It's such a gripping way to set up the story. LA from the mother God to American Apparel. I mean, I'm obviously obsessed with discussing how cultishness shows up in places that you might not think to look, and how people you might not consider cult leaders are so willing to exploit other people's desire for belonging and
sure.
being part of a mission. And
Yes.
American Apparel was so good at that. So I'm wondering, thinking about American Apparel in the context of a cult, how did the power structure sort of mirror a group like Nexium, and what was your role in it?
Totally. Well, it's funny you say mission, because when I Googled Mother God, what was that cult? It's called the World Mission Society, which is a very generic name.
They always have such generic
the
names.
World
The
Mission.
family, etc.
Yeah, totally. So sort of generic.
It was just like, how did American Apparel sort of mirror that in a way that you
Oh, yeah.
might not think
Oh,
to? Yeah.
That's where I was going with that. The mission. I'm not sure what the Mother God's mission is. Sounds a little hairy, but American Apparel was so appealing to me as this idealistic newbie right out of college with their, business model. Everything made in the USA. In this one factory, going to the factory is so inspiring. You're seeing all of these workers getting fair wages, getting English lessons, getting massages after your shift, because it's really hard to work in a machine all day, getting subsidized lunches, having a job that has dignity, you can provide for your family, and you're not working in a sweatshop in Bangladesh, like writing "help me" on the tag, like just so desperate. And seeing that a company like that could make a profit, could be wildly successful. Like why isn't every company doing that? Why did these companies in the 60s, these American companies, outsource all of these incredible jobs, the jobs that we need here? And Doug Charney is here proving that we can do it, that we can make a profit, that it's totally feasible to do, and that we should be doing it. So that was like really intoxicating to me, and still is. I still believe in that business model. Unfortunately, when there's power and money and sexy girls and
Horny men.
yes, horny men ruining everything. I mean, it's just like what that absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, it's so sad, but it's true. But yeah, I was very attracted to that mission.
Yeah. And how was the power sort of distributed? And where did you fall in the beginning on that power hierarchy, and where did you go from there?
Sure. Well, when I started, I, had my like worker bee mentality coming from the East Coast. If you just like show up on time over here, people are like, "Whoa, you're like such a hard worker." I'm like, "Oh, wait till you see what I can do." But then that was what I thought was going to happen when you graduate from college. Like hard work is appreciated and valued and rewarded. But very quickly at American Apparel, I saw that the women at the top were what we call dub girls, or what I heard being called dub girls. And those were women who, were in relationships with Doug. That's not to say they weren't hard workers. They were incredibly smart. I mean, he owes the success of that building, or the success of the building of the company, to these young women who, really have their fingers on the pulse of youth culture and sort of all that. And instead of, with hindsight now, of course, like red flags everywhere. But at the time, I was so secure in myself and my capabilities. I was like, that's their thing. They're grown women. They can date who they want. I'm not going to do it like that. I'm going to get there the right way. I'm going to get to the top without sleeping with the boss. And that's how I sort of resolved to stay within the company, because, that was their gig, but it didn't have to be mine. It was a different time. We're talking about like 20 years ago, it was like a very different time.
So you started out working in the OG Echo Park location. You were a
one.
sales girl.
Was indeed.
And I remember you saying that, you thought, and this was very valid, I have a college degree. I shouldn't just be working the register. But quickly enough, you transcended, as they might say, Nicole, to another role in the company where you wielded a significant amount of power. And would you care to describe what that new role was and how you got there?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I started out where the company was just growing so rapidly. We really just needed people like, boots on the ground running the store. So they were like, "Will you work in this retail store?" Which, I was a snob. Oh, I have a degree. Like, I'm going back to work in retail. But I still believed in the mission. And I did think I could, move up and do different things. But really what happened was I could hold down the store so much so that sort of just became my main job, like, "Oh, well, Kate can handle the store. Kate's the backbone of that store." I would hear that. And I was so desperate to get out. All the other dub girls were like flying to Tel Aviv and going to Tokyo. And there I was working the store. And just it was so unexpected. But we just needed more girls on the floor. And I started just hiring for that shop. And Dub really liked the girls that I hired. And I didn't, we get a lot of flack. "Oh, like American Apparel hired for looks. You had to be beautiful." That's like really not true. We of course looked for a certain sense of style, as the Gap would do, as anyone would do. But really, I just looked for people who had like retail experience and would like show up on time. I was like, okay, you're probably, that was like my success. There were other girls in the company who were just like, "That girl is hot. Let's hire her." I'm like, this girl has never worked a day in her life. She's not going to want to do this job. Like, retail is not fun. It's long and grueling. Like, I was just thinking about how unpleasant retail was recently.
Except at a bookstore.
Oh yeah.
Still makes me very happy.
That's so true though. A bookstore is different. A bookstore is certainly different.
Clothing retail is another
Yeah,
beast.
you're
Folding sweaters all day.
Yeah, and you're dealing with fashion and all those implications. It's just like such a misogynist industry that preys on women's insecurities and all of that kind of stuff. It's really just sort of, destined for failure.
Yeah. So you got really good at hiring people from the store, and that elevated your position.
Yes, it certainly did. And also around this same time, I happened to stumble in upon Dove in the dressing room with one of my coworkers engaged in,
biblical activities.
Yes.
Dove, by the way, for context, is the creator, owner, CEO of American Apparel, the cult leader, so to speak.
Yes, definitely. He's a man with a big idea, and
Charisma to burn.
yes, and charisma, and a libido, and like a new way of doing things, which kind of stretched throughout the whole company.
So you encountered him.
Yes, in the dressing room, and sometimes I think, was I promoted because I was such a good scout and I could really hire all these people? Or was I promoted because I stumbled in on my boss in the dressing room and I didn't cause a fuss? I was just like, oh, okay, she's my friend. She's certainly not being abused. She's in a relationship with him. She's 20 years old. She's a grown woman. I was 23. And when I saw him then, he first he was like, oh, it's okay, don't worry, I can understand if people want to watch two people getting it on, which is like not what was going on. I thought there was like a customer in the dressing room. But I giggled along. I was so uncomfortable. But I was sort of rewarded for that. And a few days later, I was on my way to New York to scout people for the location there. And that's what started it. Then I traveled across the whole country. Anytime we opened a new store, I would fly there. I would hang out for a week. I'd party. I'd hang out. Everybody loved the American Apparel Girl comes giving out jobs, amazing jobs. And I did that for 3 years.
Yeah, so Kate became the American Apparel recruiter.
Yes, I was the scout. Kate the scout.
Kate the scout,
Yeah.
the sort of Allison Mack to Dovesky for
The
stakes are different. Stakes and consequences are different.
it's true. I do, when you read the book, and there are sort of younger women who are like, you should have known back then, but like really, I hired probably 1,000 people, and the truth is that 95% of them probably never even met Dove. Yes, certainly there were some that did. But I don't feel like when people say that, oh, you should feel guilty, or you weren't so hard on yourself at the end of the book, like you hired all those people. I just feel like that's like another form of victim blaming. Like the onus is on him not to stump his 18-year-old employees, not me for hiring people for this huge corporation. Looking back, I certainly have feelings about, certain people that I brought into his orbit, but I still feel like the onus is on him, man. He was the adult. He was 35 years old. We were young women, and that's how cults work.
For sure. And he also wasn't doing things in a way that was like Keith Raniere, black or white. Like
he's not like branding.
No. Like
that's some scary shit.
For sure. That's the thing about power abuse, is that there are gray areas, and the cult of American Apparel is so up to interpretation, because in one sense it was this cult followed brand that was doing a lot of good, and there were skeletons in the closet, but it's debatable how abusive and traumatic they really were.
Yes.
And you can really tell that cognitive dissonance coming through in the book. And I'm wondering if you could sort of talk for people who don't know the full story, if you could talk a little bit about how the downfall of American Apparel came to pass, and what your feelings were about it when it happened, and after the experience of writing this book, what your feelings are toward it now.
Yes. One thing that's so important to know, and that people are often shocked by after they read Certes, is that the women in this story that had relationships with Dove, all of them still do. In fact, 2 of them still live with him. It is a testament. Yes, like, who am I to say 20 years later these women were abused? They are still in a relationship with him, willingly as grown women. It's a very complex. Everybody in this book is still with him, let me tell you. Like, everyone who's having sex with him there still has some relationship with him to this day. That's one thing. Obviously, when the company crashed and burned, it felt good. I had been laid off during the recession, and I had lots of feelings about it. A lot of my friends were still working there, Dove girls that were like really in. But I also felt like a sense of sadness for, the death of this business model that could have done so much good and just ruined by Dove's dick. Like, you know? In fact, I remember on my Instagram the day the company Dove was fired and the company soon would fold. I was in this like promotional video that would play in the stores where I would use this scarf and like tie it into a top and like it was called the California wrap. I was like, here, you know, and this is how you do the California wrap. And I had a little like screenshot of the California wrap video and I posted on my Instagram and I was like, that's a wrap, boys. Like, that's a wrap, and it felt good. But you know, it is really sad that it didn't stick around, you know, longer. And the other thing that I have to say is so many of the women that worked for this company have gone on to build other businesses, to sell those businesses. Most of them are extremely successful because this was a company that took 19-year-old girls and was like, we're going to fly you to Tel Aviv. You tell us how the window should be. And like, who knows better how to sell clothes to teenage girls than teenage girls? And, you know, I had worked for The Gap, I had worked for Urban Outfitters, and it was all crusty old dudes in suits making decisions like that. So, like, he really gave us a lot of responsibility. Like, Dove is a very complex man. People sometimes expect me to, I don't know, like, be ashamed I worked there. Well, I learned so much about myself, so much about the working world, so much about men and power. Like, I really don't regret any of it. And also, it was a lot of fun. And like, cults are fun. Everybody's smiling.
People join.
Heaven's Gate before they were going, they were smiling. Like, cults are fun.
So true. So true. Yeah, you know, oh gosh, the power dynamics of American Apparel remind me so much of so many of the power dynamics you see in Hollywood.
Oh, gosh,
You know, you have like
Totally.
fancy directors in their 40s dating women in their late 20s, and it's like there's power that comes with money and clout and Hollywood royalty. There's power that comes with youth and sexuality, and it's not that cut and dry.
Yes.
I'm curious about some of the reactions that you've gotten from your American Apparel former colleagues. I know you're still close with some people, but there have been people who have other reactions to
Oh
the
my
book.
gosh, for sure.
Could you spill the tea on that?
Absolutely. I was so naive going in. I was like, this is a true story. I'm changing everyone's name. How could anyone be mad at me? And I mean, I was a little wary. There's a character in the book, Carolee. She's a good friend of mine, and she was a Maine Dove girl. And she sort of, you know, I never had a sexual relationship with Dove. Carolee would sort of feed me the stuff that was like really going on, like the really, really, you know, juicy stories. And so I was nervous about giving her the book. I of course wanted to finish writing the book before I gave it to anybody. Just like such a good idea. Melissa Fugos' book taught me that, like, don't let anybody read your drafts because then their memories are gonna get mixed with yours. No, that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. Shit, is that how it happened? Like, I don't remember. Like,
Can't
no,
contaminate.
you cannot. It's your story. But if you want to like have a relationship with these people, you should at least give them a fair warning, just to be respectful, and also so they don't read it on the day your book comes out and you've got so many other things going on and your friends are calling, you're a liar, I hate you, you told my story, that's not how it happened. Like stuff like that happening on the day your book comes out. So glad I dealt with any problems before then. So but the funny thing is with Carolee, I was nervous, gave her the book. Took her to Coachella. We had amazing. I have a friend, right? Like less than the glow. I took her to see New York. I have a friend. She's a manager. We were at the front of the stage at Coachella, New York. Like Kelly, thinking this might be the end. Whatever. We having a great time now. And we did. We
So
really
strategic.
did. When we get back from Coachella, I give her the book. My friend who gives her a ride home, he's like, she started reading it immediately. She didn't talk to me the whole way. She was just like, turn pages. The next day, she's like, I've stayed up all night. I read the entire book. I love it. I'm so proud of you for telling this story. You know, I like all the things you want to hear. And then the next night, I'm looking at her. Oh, she posted on her Instagram story, I'm in this book. I'm like, oh, shit. You know, I did my best to anonymize you. Here you are. Oh, I'm so relieved. She doesn't, you know, she doesn't care. She's telling the world. Here I am in this book, everybody. Then the next story I see is her at Dove's factory, walking with Dove. I'm like, oh my god, oh my, like, we're all still in this cult, you know. She goes to him and reports back everything. I'm like, oh my God, Kelly, what did he say? You know, like, I'm still in the cult. Like, oh my God, don't, like, what, well, he should be caring what I say. But you fall back into those same roles. And she's like, oh, we didn't talk about the book. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. The next morning, 5 a.m., after I see these dub photos, I get a message from her. My feelings have changed.
Oh.
You've exploited me, which is very interesting language. So, I mean, I know exactly what happened there. Like, the cult it really is, like, we all still fall into those roles 20 years later. And, yeah, I've heard, I was sort of hoping it would maybe cool down, or she would talk to other people. You know, she would be like, everyone's gonna know it's me because you say I surf. I'm like, this is Los Angeles, are you kidding me? You know, I thought maybe that would sort of mellow. But of course, when I was in New York recording the audiobook the first day, at noon, I like get my phone off airplane mode. It's from Kelly. This is like a month after she read the book. Oh my gosh, Carolee. It's a month after she read the book. Oh my gosh, we're all friends here. She was still sort of like, this is my story. You told my stories. I think in some ways, some people maybe feel like I'm like taking ownership over this American Apparel story that really is so universal. I hope, you know, I keep telling her, like, I hope I can one day explain to you these decisions that I made. You know, she's like, why didn't you tell me you were writing it? Why didn't you let me read your drafts? You know, I hope one day I can explain all this to you, but there just seems like there's so much animosity and dub in her ear. Like, it's just now is not the time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The parallels between this and so many cult stories that you hear are remarkable. If not the actual consequences and physical pain and trauma, then at the very least the hold that he has on certain people after so many years.
Yeah, totally. Can I ask a question?
Of
Yes,
course.
What's the defining, what makes something a cult versus just like a group of tight people with a great leader?
There's nothing. Like, I mean, it's so sensational and fluid, it's subjective,
Like,
like
biggest cults are like corporate work environments.
for sure.
Like, even at Drag Race, like, it's still like culty, you know? Like,
Yes.
for our 15th season, they made us all jackets. I'm like, oh, I want to wear the jacket. I want us all to wear the jacket. I want to
Yeah.
the street wear the jacket.
I mean,
like,
There are quotes that people have come up with, you know, cult plus time equals religion, or, you know, some conservative politician said once a cult is like porn, you know it when you see it. But those aren't, you know, it's so subjective. It's subjective to this day. I mean, there are like self-proclaimed cult experts who are maybe, you know, cult survivors who went on to get a PhD in psychology like that or something like that, who have tried to come up with a rubric. You know, these are the qualifications that make something a cult: a charismatic leader, ends justify the means philosophy, us versus them mentality, etc. The problem is that there are so many mainstream groups that check off every box, and then there are fringy groups on the edges of society who
That's
don't check off every box. So it's really
but
hard
there
to
is
say.
one thing that I think separates cults as we know them for just people being like, oh, it's a cult classic, or oh, it's a cult when you do this like weight loss trend or whatever.
Clear head.
And it's the cults that we think of as being dangerous cults always sort of seem to control and manage how people have sex. You know?
That's
And
my
that
interpretation.
American
yeah.
Apparel, absolutely. You know, he was like, keep it in the family, date your coworkers. Like, there was so much control over how we have sex, how you think about sex. I think that is like the defining characteristic between a dangerous cult and like Soul Cycle.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, all
Is
those,
there one?
but
Oh,
yes,
God.
no, all those allegations came out 2 years ago about certain all-star Soul Cycle instructors having sex with their front row
Yeah.
students.
I mean,
I mean,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know, Oscar Wilde said everything in life is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. And you know,
Oh my God.
American Apparel wore its sex and power dynamics on its sleeve.
Yeah, that's so good. I didn't do a what do they call it? Yes.
And then we're going
Because I was like, oh, that should have been it. That was a good one.
for the paperback.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no true defining, you know, red flags. but there are plenty of non-defining red flags in this story for sure. Okay, before we, actually I have one more question, then I want to play a game. The question is, are there any plans to turn this into a TV show?
Yes. I mean, I was. Yes, in fact, I have. I sold the option. It's a film option. I was super fortunate to have a lot of interest in this a few months before publication, and the deal is done. We just, with the strike and everything, it's sort of poor form. But I can brag about it here. My friends, I've already told you Carolee's name. And that is that, I mean, fingers crossed. It's really hard to get something made, of course, but
It's made for the silver screen.
yes, thank you.
Who's gonna play you?
I don't know. We'll see.
An unknown. Make him famous. Listen to me, Cult of Hollywood. Okay, now we're gonna play a game.
Right. Yeah. I don't know anything about this game. She wouldn't tell me.
Oh,
So
it's not a game that we can all play. No,
Okay,
it's not a game that you can win or lose. But there's so much Y2K nostalgia in here, and that's why it's so well timed, because Y2K nostalgic fashion
Who
is.
would have ever
Yeah.
thought it's the
Oh my
worst
God.
fashion in the world?
I know it's so bad.
I'm not wearing belts where you don't need a belt. I refuse. I can't do the low waist. No,
It's really
I
bad.
won't
I
go back.
know. But a lot of those brands had such a monocultural hold on us. And American Apparel is one of the most cult followed ones. Oh, I wanted to tell you, I had one of those shirts that said "Stop bitching, start a revolution."
Was that American Apparel?
It was.
Oh my God.
That was-
That's after my time. They got very creative.
Yeah. No, I wore it to freshman year of high school. They made me change my shirt.
No way.
I was really proud of
that.
Anywho, there are a lot of cult followed in the hyperbolic sense, or maybe not. Y2K brands, and we're gonna play a game called What's Cultier. I'm gonna go down the list of some of these brands, and you're gonna name whether you think American Apparel was cultier
Okay.
or this brand. Okay, so this is a brand that you also work at, and you talk about a little bit in the book. What's cultier, American Apparel or Urban Outfitters?
Oh, Urban Outfitters. I mean, no.
American Apparel.
Yeah, Urban Outfitters was just like a snore of a company run by a Republican.
Corporate bullshit.
Yeah, total corporate bullshit. Like nothing exciting or fun.
For sure. Okay. What's cultier, striptease, American Apparel or Abercrombie and Fitch?
Oh God, that's such a good one. It's funny because in the day, I feel like they're equally culty. They were sort of our enemy in the day. Like we wouldn't hire Abercrombie, they were different people. But everything that I hear about Abercrombie now, it's just straight up American Apparel. There's a documentary, right?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it, but
Yeah.
that's tricky. I mean, I don't know because I work for Abercrombie, but I would say they're equally culty.
I would agree.
They have corporate cultures, man.
For sure. Especially when they come with those identity benefits.
Yes.
It's like American Apparel wasn't just clothes. You were an American Apparel girl. You lived and breathed it, even if you didn't work there. We all wanted to be American Apparel girls, or I'll speak for myself. I certainly did. But there were the Abercrombie girls. Like it came with a scent.
Abercrombie guys.
The Abercrombie guys. It came with a whole sort of template for how to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And that can be really powerful when it feels like there are too many options for you to be.
Yeah.
Okay. What's cultier, American Apparel or Juicy Couture?
Oh my God. Because Juicy has that outfit. Like that's another thing. Uniform. Are you wearing a new outfit? You might be in a cult. Are you totally changing your outfit?
Yeah.
Are you wearing all red for Rashidi? Whatever that is. Like, yeah, that's also very culty. And it also, it signifies something for sure. It's back. I'm seeing those jewel tone sweatsuits.
Oh, I know. And that came with sex and power dynamics too.
Yeah.
Those Juicy Couture tracksuits. It was the Paris Hilton
Yeah,
vibe.
J-Lo. I think of J-Lo.
Yeah,
I think of
J-Lo.
Juicy butt.
Yeah.
I think of Juicy.
Which is different than the American Apparel girl who was a little more like bold.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Okay, so maybe that's a tie too.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. What's cultier, American Apparel or True Religion jeans? It has religion in the name.
That's true. Oh God.
Those are some expensive pants.
It's gotta be American Apparel because they're like I can't think of who ran True Religion or who would wear True Religion.
I just saw Oppenheimer. They say like true power lives in the shadows.
Yeah.
That's her religious CEO. Who is he? Who is she?
Yeah.
She's probably like laughing all the way to the bank. She's like, nobody knows who I am.
Totally. Can you still buy True Religion jeans?
I'm sure we can. Should we all go to Crossroads?
I don't know.
Oh, those are good jeans though. Had a little bit of stretch.
Yeah.
All right.
I do remember.
Last one. What's cultier? American Apparel or Fred Siegel?
Oh my god. Ooh, that's so tricky.
No windows at Fred Siegel.
No window, a wall of ivy. What's going on in there? I don't know. There's paparazzi hanging outside all day. You can't see what's going on. It is like a very special club for people with lots of money. Yeah. Culty, very culty, very culty. Hard to compare with. I mean, American Apparel's culty is one of all of these, I think.
There's your answer.
Yeah,
American
because you
Apparel.
know, like you see the leader, he's charismatic, you want to be in his orbit, he's fun, like, you know.
Yeah, who's leading Fred Siegel?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
who?
It's just like those monkey pajamas.
What about like Goop?
Oh my God,
Well,
Goop
Goop
there
is
you go.
contemporary day.
Yeah. Goop.
I
Goop,
mean-
Goop, I'm sure is cultier.
For sure.
I mean, well, it's just so much bigger.
Gwyneth Paltrow. I
Yo,
mean,
eggs.
oh, what was
What's
it?
going on?
What was that amazing meme? You know, the UFO news, the new era of the UFO news broke last week, and someone was like, "If we have to send someone to meet the aliens, send Gwyneth Paltrow." She's the representative for humanity. Hello. Can I make you a runny egg? Yeah, no, Goop
Yes.
wins.
Yes, excellent. Yes.
Great question.
wins.
Anyone else want to play? You got another brand you want to compare to American Apparel? Y2K or not? Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow wins. She is truly laughing all over the bank.
She really is.
I admire
On bra.
it. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's open it up to some questions.
Brian, thanks for coming. Brian was in my writing workshop.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
very important to me finishing this goddamn book. If it weren't for that, like,
Brilliant.
thank you, Brian. Have a wonderful night. Thank you. Like, if you ever are trying to write a book, people told me this, and I was like, whatever, I can do it on my own. No, you can't. Like, you need a writing group. You need that deadline every week or every 2 weeks. You need that feedback. You need to hear what other people are writing. Like, get a writing group. They're out there. You can pay for one. Or your writing group can be someone that you know. It can be your 2 friends, and you just make a commitment. Every Saturday we're having coffee. We're reading 500 words. Do it. It's the only way to do it. Because I would be ashamed if I showed up and I had nothing to write. I'd be like half an hour before that thing. And like that's how I wrote my book. Like I wrote it in panicked little snippets. And you can do that. Like
It doesn't read that way.
I'm so glad. Like there's writers who are like, I wake up in the morning. I write for 3 hours. Like no. I'm writing like sweat and like oh my god, how much time do I have left just so I'm not embarrassed? Like embarrassment fuel.
Make your shame work for you.
Yes, totally. It works. It works really well, actually.
Speaking of shame, who has a question?
Yeah, well, I just a comment more than anything. So the song, the 5 Seconds of Summer song, she looked so perfect in her American Apparel underwear.
Of course.
Okay, so what I really want to know is how many brands, we don't know this answer, but how many brands actually have songs written about them?
Oh my gosh, that is so true.
But I don't know. I'm going to look it up on the web.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean,
Abercrombie.
Do they have, what song is that?
LFO. I mean, I'm not gonna sing. it.
Let's,
But-
I mean,
Yeah,
who else
sure.
is on
Another-
there?
I feel like you should sing. You're the singer.
Ooh.
Big dick.
sadly,
You
we
got
do
the
50s
big
music. We do 50s music. No, sadly, I'm like not good enough to know that song to sing it. But I think
It's from like 2000.
Yeah.
LFO.
Well, I feel like a lot of
I like girls who wear Abercrombie.
I mean, I like girls. Oh yeah,
Where I'm
Or
from,
Abercrombie,
bitch.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
Yes.
it is.
Yes, of course I know that song. It is interesting that that's another super culty brand. That's in
Yes.
there.
Well,
But nobody's singing about like J. Crew.
What about the apple bottom jeans? What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
What brand
sure.
is that?
That I think they were called
Oh,
apple.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
They were so cute. They had an apple pocket.
Totally. I feel
I
like a
didn't
lot
have
of
an apple bottom though. So I couldn't wear them.
me neither.
They
No.
could not fill out that.
I feel like a lot of high fashion brands make their way to some.
Oh, yeah,
Gucci,
totally.
Zara,
Yeah, for sure.
Balenciaga.
Yeah.
But this
Perhaps.
was a
Yeah.
mastige brand
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
became big enough to. That's a big
Yeah,
deal.
for sure.
Yeah. good call.
Yes,
We should do some signing and everything.
yes.
Yeah, should we do one more cue and then we'll sign?
Where's Jeff today?
He is starting, well, he hasn't started, he's doing it all again. He's doing Los Angeles apparel. There are billboards all around. Here's the thing, he had a company before American Apparel that went bankrupt. American Apparel went bankrupt. He went in, he bought all of the sewing machines from the factory. He set up camp in a new factory in South Central. Like, he is gonna do it again. He is committed to that, like, it is his life, it is all he does. Now, I have ordered some things from Los Angeles Apparel. It's super difficult to find stuff made in America. I love their bikinis. I'm gonna order from them. But every time I get it, it's like covered in dirt. A really weird size. Like, stuff there is like not going well. It's like not organized.
Maybe they just know it's you on the other end.
No, exactly. I've had that
like
thought.
paranoid thing. I like.
I've absolutely had that thought. I always use my like middle name. I'm like Kate Conti, just in case. But yes, that is possible that is happening.
That is so funny.
Yes.
You know
It
what
is
this made me think of? I'm now thinking what's cultier, American Apparel or Nasty Gal. Speaking of like, you know, companies that went bankrupt that had like a face and a vibe and like grew too fast, you know? Nasty Gal, Girl Boss. That's like that was the next era.
Yeah, there is such a thing as just like getting too big.
Yeah.
Who's cultier? Tesla?
Tesla! They're trying to go to the freaking Mars. Like,
I know. Yes, totally. Yeah, definitely.
Tesla. Yes.
I just want to point out Barbie, which is super culture right now. But
Everyone in pink at the theater. Like, I had that exact thought.
Me too. I wore it pink.
Yeah, I did too.
when was the last time you spoke to Dove? And do you anticipate possibly hearing from him once this gets a little bit more?
That thought has always sort of haunted me because the last time that I talked to him is the moment I talked to him in this book. I mean, I saw him in my orbit after that, of course, but that was really the last meaningful connection that I had with him. But we're Facebook friends, and I'm just like, check out my New York Times review. And I'm like, oh shit, like there he is. Maybe you're reading all of them. But there was a Washington Post article in the style section that just came out a couple days ago, and it was the first article that I read that says Charney did not respond for comment. And I was like, sorry, Shelley, yes. And I'm not surprised in a way. I would love him to, like, let's amp this up, like, what could he possibly say? But another way, I'm not surprised because this is undeniable. It's a true story. Like, what could he possibly say? So yeah, I'm waiting for the Facebook message of. I really, when this book was sort of just about to come out, I would think like my phone could just start ringing. You know, like I still have his number. You know, like could that happen? But I'm getting a little more confident that I'm not going to hear from him.
That's would be smart of him to let it
right.
just live on its
He
own.
does love listening. So like, I mean, like, there's nothing in here that he hasn't done in front of a journalist or said or, so I don't know. Maybe he likes the attention. He just wants people to know about something.
Yeah, keep my name in your mouth.
Did you get rights from people?
You mean like their permission?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I changed their names, and there's one character who's a composite. I changed where they came from. I really sort of tried to make everyone anonymous unless they were a public figure, and that way they can keep their name. And I had very extensive legal edits.
I was gonna say.
Extensive. I was really surprised because I thought a lot of things I would have to change or document. But it came down to things like the lawyer being like, you call him a perv. Now, let's look up the definition of perv. Is he a perv? And I'd be like, Dove Charney's a perv. So he was like, all right, let's Google Dove Charney perv. And the first thing that comes up is like some headline that says, Dove Charney, notorious perv.
Yeah.
And my lawyer was like, okay, all right, we can call him a perv. It was like stuff like that, like semantics. Can we call him a misogynist? Can we call him a predator? Not, can we talk about him sleeping with a 16-year-old girl? I had her age as 16. They made me change it to a junior in high school. Like stuff like that was in the legal edit. But the facts of the story and the way I wrote it, there was very little tweaking that needed to be done, surprisingly.
It's fascinating how little you need to do to avoid like a defamation lawsuit.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, and the lawyer explained this to me, like anybody can sue you, you know, like
Yeah,
anybody
anytime
can
for
sue you at any
anything.
time, but we'll make it so they won't win. But it will still be like, you know, a huge expense.
And they're not suing you. They're suing the publisher.
yeah, but it says copyright paid Flannery on there.
I know, but they would sue the publisher.
All right. Okay, good.
I know this. When you write about cults,
Oh, yeah, she knows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope I don't know, but who knows?
the option for the film?
Amazon. Yes.
Yay.
For yes, not just for streaming too. Like there's theatrical. You know, people are going back to the movie theater now.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you. I know
Less
it's so-
cultier. American Apparel.
Oh my god. Are you kidding?
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
both of you.
Thank you. This was so fun. And thank you, Amanda. Like,
Buy your books, get them signed, give them
yes,
to your
yes, for
friends,
sure. Thank
someone
you.
in your cult.
Yeah, right. I'm just gonna use the back.